This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning to everyone. Today I'm going to discuss about bronchial asthma. This can be discussed under these headings: now introduction to epidemics, clinical features, diagnosis and treatment. The definition of asthma: asthma is a heterogeneous disease, usually characterized by chronic airway inflammation. So it is defined by a history of respiratory symptoms such as wheeze, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and cough that vary over time and in intensity, together with variable expected flow in limitation. The risk factors, these are the risk factors for development of bronchial asthma. The endogenous risk factors, the genetic predisposition like atopy, airway hyperresponsiveness, gender, ethnicity, obesity, early viral infections. Environmental risk factors include indoor allergens, outdoor allergens, occupation sensitization, passive smoking, respiratory infections, air pollution, dampness, and mold exposure. So these are the factors that trigger the asthma symptoms. So viral infections, allergens at work or home, house dust mite, pollens and cockroaches, exercises, and hyperventilation can also trigger the asthma. With exposure to cold air, stress, tobacco smoking, drugs like NSAIDs and aspirin, beta blockers, all this can trigger the asthmatic symptoms. Sulfur dioxide and latent gases like household sprays and paint fumes, all this can trigger the asthmatic attacks. This is how uh, bronchial asthma symptoms develop. So allergens, installation, viruses, air pollutants can cause inflammation, which will lead to chronic inflammatory bronchitis. So airway hyperresponsiveness. These are the triggers. Allergens in exercise, cold air, SpO2. All these trigger the airway inflammation and hyperresponsiveness that will lead to cough, wheeze, chest pain, tightness, and dyspnea. This is the uh, graph pictures showing uh, changes in airways. So this is the normal airway. This is the asthmatic airway that's showing inflammation and mild narrowing. And in these people asthma, inside the airways can get red and swollen and filled with the mucus. So this asthmatic airway tighten muscle. So here the muscle layer is normal. Here the muscle layer is normal, but mucus plug and inflammatory pathology is present. Whereas in severe asthma, the muscle layer is also get involved and that will further constrict the air pathway. Pathophysiology. Uh, there are main players in pathophysiology. These players include dendritic cells, eosinophils, mast cells, IgE antibodies, and T helper cells. These are the main cells which will lead to development of bronchial asthma or acute exacerbation of bronchial asthma. So these are the cells. This picture showing allergens. Allergens exposure to allergens will lead to activation of dendritic cells and mast cells. Mast cells further activates the eosinophils and neutrophils, whereas dendritic cells activate the type 2 helper cells. Type 2 helper cells further activate the eosinophils and neutrophils, and that will lead to release of cytokines and interleukins. That will damage the bronchial epithelial cells. That will lead to activation of epithelial shedding. So formation of mucus plug. All this that will lead to constriction of airway smooth muscles and hypertrophy and hyperplasia. So this is the picture showing allergens, dendritic cell activation, CD4 T cell activation, release of interleukin 4, interleukin 5, and interleukin 13, interleukin 5, activation of plasma cells, eosinophils, and mast cells that will lead to ultimately leads to release of histamines, leukotrienes, and prostaglandin due to and from eosinophils, release of cytokines and leukotrienes. All these are inflammatory mediators that will lead to hyperresponsiveness of the airway and leads to mucus plug formation and inflammation of the airway and bronchoconstriction. So this is the whole thing I have explained previously. Trigger factor: inflammation, hypersecretion of mucus, constriction of the airway muscle, swelling of the bronchial membranes, and narrowing of the passage. So this is also same thing. Clinical features. Clinical features includes characteristic symptoms of asthma are wheezing, dyspnea, coughing, and other variable symptoms. Prodromal symptoms include itching under the chin, discomfort between scapula, and inexplicable fear. So signs: typical inspiratory rhonchi and a greater extent of expiratory rhonchi. Rhonchi of inspiratory and expiratory may be present. So how will you make the diagnosis of asthma? If patients with the respiratory symptoms, these symptoms are typical of asthma. You are suspecting asthma, then proceed with the detailed examination and history for examination support of diagnosis. If there is no symptom suggestive of asthma, we further take history and test for the alternative diagnosis. If alternative diagnosis is confirmed, so you can treat the alternative diagnosis. So if your history and examination shows the symptoms of asthma, or next we proceed for pulmonary function test like spirometry and peak expiratory flow evaluation. So with the reversibility test, the result supports the asthma and proceed for the treatment of asthma. In between, if there is any clinical urgency, so you can treat with the empiric treatment with the inhaled corticosteroids and cytotoxic beta agonist, review the response and can proceed for diagnosis. So if spirometric finding confirm the asthma, you can treat the asthma. So if there is negative results for bronchial asthma in spirometry, repeat another occasion or arrange other tests confirm the diagnosis to confirm the diagnosis of asthma. If there is no asthma, consider trial treatment for most likely diagnosis or refer further investigations. So this is how we can proceed with the clinically suspicious case. So asthma phenotype. These are the phenotypes of asthma. So allergic asthma, non-allergic asthma, late onset asthma, asthma with fixed airflow limitation, asthma with obesity. The criteria for diagnosis of asthma. So these criteria include history of variable respiratory symptoms, more than one type of symptom, like the wheeze, shortness of breath, cough, chest tightness. Symptoms often worse at night or in the early morning. Symptoms vary over time and intensity. Symptoms are triggered by viral infections, exercise, allergen exposure, change in weather, irritants, or excessive laugh, or car exhaustion fumes, smoke or strong smells. So this is the history. This is the history wise according to we can diagnose asthma. So evidence-based variables for diagnosis of asthma. So confirmation of presence of airflow limitation includes documentation of FEV1 and FEC reduction. FEV1 forced expiratory volume, forced vital capacity. So the ratio of forced vital capacity for forced respiratory volume is reduced at least once when FEV1 is low. So FEV1 FEC ratio is normally greater than 0.75 to 0.80 in healthy adults and 0.90 in children. So confirmed variation in lung function is greater than in healthy individuals. So the greater the variation or the more times variation is seen, the greater the probability of the diagnosis of asthma. So if you see the variations in FEV and FEC ratio compared with the normal healthy individuals, so there is a high chances of development of asthma. So to confirm this, we can perform the bronchodilator reversibility test. So after giving the bronchodilators, if there is improvement in FEV1 and FEC ratio, then so we can confirm the bronchial asthma. The significant increase in FEV1 and peak expiratory flow after 4 weeks of controlled treatment or bronchodilator therapy. So that indicates the bronchial asthma. So these are the spirometric findings in bronchial asthma. So this is the curve showing bronchial asthma before bronchodilators. So airflow is FEV1 is very low along with the time. So after giving bronchodilator therapy, so the curve increased. So FEV1 is increased. So this is the normal person's curve. Normal person FEV1. This is bronchial asthma after bronchodilator therapy. This is before bronchodilator therapy. So similarly, this is the volume curve. This is the flow curve. So the flow, this is the normal patient's uh, volume curve, flow curve. So this is the uh, bronchial asthma before bronchodilator therapy. So flow is very limited in bronchial asthma. After giving bronchodilator therapy, this is the flow curve. So even though after bronchodilator therapy, both volume and flow are not equalizing to healthy individuals. So there is a persistent deficiency between healthy individual and bronchial asthma patient. The investigations include chemical tests like serum IgE, imaging. Imagings include chest X-rays and CT. So chest X-ray may be usually normal, or there may be hyperinflated lungs sometimes. So CT may show areas of bronchitis in severe asthma. So these are some other diagnosing tests for asthma. So occupational asthma. Every patient with adult onset asthma should be asked about occupational exposure and whether they are better than away from better when away from work or not. Pregnancy, there is a asthmatic symptoms are increasing or not. The elderly asthma is usually either underdiagnosed or overdiagnosis. Smokers, asthma and COPD may coexist and overlap, particularly in COPD elderly. The patients with cough have only respiratory symptom. Patients with cough has only respiratory symptoms. The DDs include chronic upper airway cough syndrome, like postnasal drips, GERD, vocal cord dysfunction, eosinophilic bronchitis, cough variant asthma. So these are the differential diagnosis for only patients with cough only symptom. So assessing a patient with the asthma, the asthma control includes two domains: assess symptom control over the last 4 weeks, assess risk factors for poor outcome, including low lung function. So treatment issues: check inhaler technique and adherence to inhalational devices. Ask about side effects. Does the patient have written asthma action plan or not? What are the patient's attitudes and goals for their asthma? The comorbidities like rhinosinusitis, GERD, obesity, obstructive sleep apnea, depression, anxiety. These are all the comorbidities, whether they are present or not. We have to assess for. We have to assess in bronchial asthma patient. So this is the GINA assessment of symptom control. GINA means Global Initiative for Asthma. Global Initiative for Asthma Assessment of Control Symptoms. So these are the symptoms which I have to uh, checking for the symptom control. So in the past 4 weeks, patient had daytime asthma symptoms more than twice a week. So more daytime asthma symptoms more than twice a week. We have to check for yes, any night waking due to asthma or reliever needed for symptoms more than twice a week. Any activity limitation due to asthma. So these are all the questions we have asked for assessment of asthma. If there is we have to make note of yes or no. So if there is no symptom of any of these symptoms, so this is well controlled asthma. If there are 1 to 2 symptoms are present, this is partially controlled. If there are 3 to 4 symptoms are present, so this is uncontrolled asthma. So this is the GINA assessment of symptom control. GINA assessment of risk factors. To assess risk factors for diagnosis periodically, measure FEV1 at starting of the treatment, after 3 to 6 months of the treatment, to record the patient's personal best and periodical for ongoing risk assessment. So measurement of FEV1 at the treatment starting level, and 3 to 6 months after treatment starting. So modifiable risk factors include medications like inhaled no poor adherence to medication, comorbidities like GERD, obesity, exposure, smoke, allergens, and pollution, uh, lung functions like low FEV1 less than 60% predicted, high reversibility. Other tests include food amount, blood eosinophil, and FEM. The major independent risk factors of flare-ups include ever being intubated on ICU for asthma. So these are all the uh, major risk factors for acute exacerbation. If the patient has any history of intubation previously or got admitted in ICU previously, having one or more exacerbation last 12 months. If there is one or more exacerbation 12 months, patient having higher flare-up rate. So risk factors for fixed date for limitation. These are the risk factors for fixed date for limitation, which includes preterm or low birth weight, lack of inhaled corticosteroid particles, exposure to noxious particles, low FEV1, and chronic mucus hypersecretion, sputum or blood eosinophil. The role of lung function in monitoring of asthma. Lung function should be recorded at diagnosis and 3 to 6 months after treatment, starting of the treatment, and periodically over 1 to 2 years. So more frequent in children and those who have higher risk of acute exacerbation. So we have to do lung functions every 3 to 6 months, and after that periodically after 1 to 2 years. So assessment of asthma severity. So this is currently retrospectively assessed from the level of treatment required to control symptoms and exacerbation. So for mild asthma that is controlled with step 1 or step 1 through step 2 treatment. Moderate asthma well controlled with step 3 treatment. Severe asthma requires step 5 management or remains uncontrolled even after step 5. So what are the step 1, step 2 treatment? I will explain further. Management of asthma. So this is the overall this picture saying overall stepwise management of asthma according to the textbook. So this is very important for a management of asthma for clinical term, for overalls of the practical examination. So this is the stepwise management of asthma. So for the mild intermittent cases, short-acting beta-2 agonist is enough for the treatment. So you can use short-acting beta-2 agonist for mild intermittent asthma. For mild persistent asthma, you have to add inhaled corticosteroids, low-dose inhaled corticosteroids for short-acting beta agonist for mild persistent asthma. So for moderate persistent asthma, so, so along with the short-acting beta agonist, you have to add low-dose inhaled corticosteroids and long-acting beta agonist. For severe persistent asthma, you have to use high-dose inhaled corticosteroids along with long-acting beta agonist with the short-acting beta agonist for symptom relief. So for very severe persistent asthma, so both SABA, inhaled corticosteroids high dose, and long-acting beta agonist and oral or parenteral corticosteroids have to be used. So this is the simple picture showing uh, how to treat according to severity of the asthma. So this is the very important. So general includes the long-term goals of asthma management are symptom control and risk reduction. So treatment to prevent asthma exacerbation, control symptoms. So medications which GINA recommends every adult and adolescent with asthma should receive inhaled corticosteroids containing controlled medication to reduce the risk of serious exacerbations even in patients with infrequent symptoms. So according to GINA, the patient has to receive inhaled corticosteroids containing controlled medication to relieve the frequent symptoms. So treatment modifiable risk factors and comorbidities. Treat the modifiable risk factors and comorbidities and non-morphological therapy. So these are the steps according to GINA. So this is the assessment, global assessment tests for bronchial asthmatic patients. So how do you assess the patients? To diagnose, symptom control, risk factors, control the symptoms and risk factors, diagnose the case appropriately. So inhaler technique and adherence, patient preference. So after assessing, adjust the treatment So adjusting the treatment, asthma medications, non-pharmacological strategies to treat modifiable risk factors. So this is adjustment of the treatment. This is adjustment of the treatment and review the response. So this is the review response. How will you review the response? So review the symptoms, review the exacerbations, review the side effects of drugs, patient satisfaction, and lung function. Lung function. So this is the control strategy of bronchial asthma according to Gina process. Adjust the treatment and review the symptoms and treatment. So background, these are the changes according to the short-acting beta agonist and the risk factors associated with the short-acting beta agonist only treatment. So short-acting beta agonist can lead to development of some complications. So this is why short-acting beta agonist use is limited in uh, since 2019. So new guidelines developed in 2019 according to use of the short-acting beta agonist. So regular and frequent use of short-acting beta agonist is associated with adverse effects like beta receptor downregulation, decreased bronchoprotection, and rebound hyperresponsiveness, and decreased bronchodilator response, increased allergic response, and increased eosinophilic airway inflammation. So these are all the complications associated with the regular use of short-acting beta agonist, which includes increased eosinophilic airway response, bronchoprotection, reduced bronchoprotection, beta receptor downregulation. So these are the complications associated with the uh, uh, short-acting beta agonist uh, poorly treatment. So this is the GINA 2018 guideline uh, for management of bronchial asthma. So this is also stepwise bronchial asthma. So here the major changes. So previously no control was recommended for step one. So the previously only SABA only used. Now the treatment is changing. So this is the preferred controller choices. For step one is consider low dose inhaled corticosteroids. So previously we have used for the step one, we have used only short-acting beta agonist. Now the short-acting beta agonist is uh, replaced with the low-dose inhaled corticosteroid. For the step two, low-dose inhaled corticosteroids, leukotriene. If any other controller required, leukotriene antagonist is added for, or low-dose theophylline is added. For step three, low-dose inhaled corticosteroids or long-acting beta agonist with a mild mid or high dose mid or high dose inhaled corticosteroids, low dose inhaled corticosteroid plus leukotriene antagonist. For step 4, mid or high inhaled corticosteroids, long-acting beta agonist or ipratropium bromide, mid or low dose inhaled corticosteroids or leukotriene antagonist. For step 5, same like step 4 plus add ipratropium bromide or anti-IgE, anti-interleukin 5 treatment and low dose oral corticosteroid. So these are the step 5 treatment according to GINA 2018 guidelines. So GINA 2000 the guidelines are changing in 2019, almost similar to 2018. So this is almost similar to 2018 guidelines. Some changes are made to prefer control treatments, low dose inhaled corticosteroids like formoterol. Others include same guidelines are same for next other steps. So only change is low dose inhaled corticosteroid taken when not SABA is taken. So, no change, no excessive changes. So only second treatment is changed. So rest of the things are same as for the 2018 guidelines. So these are the inhaled corticosteroids which are used. So diclomethasone, dipropionate. These are the doses required for the low dose, medium dose, and high dose. So budesonide, diclofenac, fluticasone. These are all the fluticasone, mometasone, and triamcinolone. These are all the inhaled corticosteroids which are used in management of bronchial asthma. Stepwise management. This is all already explained. Everything is explained previously. So, so how often should asthma patient should be received the treatment? So 1 to 3 months after treatment started, then every 3 to 12 months. So during pregnancy, every 4 to 6 months, every 4 to 6 weeks, and after an exacerbation within 1 week, the patient has to reassess the further symptoms and treatment assessment. Stepping up of asthma treatment. So for the how you step up the treatment of asthma? The sustained step up for at least 2 to 3 months if asthma poorly controlled. So if asthma is poorly controlled, you step up the treatment for 2 to 3 months. So important to check for common causes like symptoms not due to asthma and incorrect inhaler technique, poor adherence. So you have to look for these modifications when there is symptoms are not controlled. So if the diagnosis is wrong or incorrect inhaler technique or poor adherence. So short-term step up for 1 to 2 weeks with viral infection and allergens may be initiated by patient with internal asthma action. So day-to-day adjustment for patient with prescribed low-dose inhaled corticosteroid, formoterol maintenance and reliever regimen. So for a patient who is on inhaled corticosteroids, formoterol maintenance and reliever regimen, so we have to adjust the dose day by day. Step down. How will you step down to find the lowest dose to control the symptoms and exacerbations and minimize the risk of side effects. So when to consider stepping down when the symptoms have been well controlled and lung function stable for greater than 3 months. So you have to step down the therapy when the symptoms are controlled greater than 3 months. So no respiratory infection, no patient not traveling and not pregnant. So then you can step down the therapy. So prepare for step down. So record the level of symptom control and consider the risk factors. Make sure the patient has a written asthma action plan. And book a follow-up visit in 1 to 3 months. Then prepare the patient for step down. Stepping down, inhale corticosteroid doses by 25 to 50% at 3 months intervals is feasible and safe for the most patients. So for the every 3 months, you have to step down the therapy with 50 to 25% of inhaled corticosteroids. The complete stopping of inhaled corticosteroid is not recommended in adults with asthma because it risk of exacerbations. So inhaler skills and adherence. So you have to check the inhaler skills, choose the inhaler and check whether they are using proper way or if they are not using proper way, correct the inhaler skills and confirm the adherence to treatment and check the improvement. So treating modifiable risk factors. So we have to reduce the exposure to tobacco and the severe asthma exacerbation. So control the trigger events. Appropriate food, avoid the food that exacerbate the symptom. So self guide, use of regimen with to minimize exacerbation. So non-pharmacological therapies include smoking cessation, physical activity, identify the remove oxidation sensitizers, ask about NSAID including aspirin. To avoid NSAIDs and aspirin. So this is a written asthma action plan. The action plan should include the patient usual asthma medications, when and how to increase the reliever and control and start oral corticosteroids, how to assist the medical care if symptom fail to respond, to increase inhaler reliever, increase frequency as needed, adding spacer for metrodose inhaler may be helpful, early and rapid increase in inhaler controller, add oral corticosteroids if needed. So this is how we can plan the we can add the action plan to asthmatic patient. So increase the inhaler reliever, early and rapid increase in inhaler controller, add oral corticosteroids if needed. So managing exacerbations in primary care. So exacerbation, how to control exacerbations. So assess the patient if it is asthma, the risk factors of present are related to that severity of exacerbation. So mild to moderate. Uh, so how to decide whether the patient is mild to moderate. Talks in phrases. Prefer sitting in to lying. not agitated, respiratory rate increased, accessory muscles not used, pulse rate 150 to 120 beats per minute. In O2 saturation is 90 to 95%. The peak expiratory flow rate is 50%, predicted than or best. So the patient having these features, we will consider as mild to moderate. So uh, the patient talks in words, sits in enhanced position or forward bending position. If the patient is agitated, or respiratory rate is greater than 30, accessory muscles are in use, and pulse rate greater than 120 beats per minute, O2 saturation less than 90%, the peak expiratory flow is less than 50% than predicted, so then considered as severe. So life-threatening means patient is drowsy, confused or silent chest. So these two require urgent management to transfer to acute care facility. While waiting, you inhale before transferring or while transferring, give short-acting beta agonist or ipratropium bromide, oxygen, systemic corticosteroid. So if the mild to moderate is there, mild to moderate symptoms are present, start treatment with the short-acting beta agonist, 4 to 10 puffs with a metal dose inhaler. Add prednisolone, 1 mg per kg, maximum 50 mg per day to control oxygen. So we have to initiate oxygen therapy. So, after giving this treatment, continue treatment with a short-acting beta agonist as needed. Assess the responses after 1 hour. So if the symptoms are worsening, go for acute facility care. So even though after continuing treatment, if the symptoms are worsening, consider acute care. If the symptoms are improving or the patient is improving, assess for discharge. Symptom improved, not needed, no need of when you consider for discharges, no need of short-acting beta agonist. Symptoms are improved, PEF improved, oxygen saturation greater than 95%, 94% at room air. If there are adequate resources for maintenance at home, then you can discharge the patient. So, at least assess the arrangement of discharge. So relievers continue as needed. Controller. So these controller and reliever should be assessed while discharging. To add prednisone, to continue prednisone 5 to 7 days or 3 to 5 days for children. Follow up within 2 to 7 days. So follow up while following. So check the reliever medication, controller medication, and assess the risk factors. Now made action plan accordingly. So this is all explained. So same thing. So summary for safety, Vinay no longer recommends SABA only treatment. For step 1, the decision was based on evidence that SABA only treatment increases the risk of severe exacerbation, and that adding in any inhaled corticosteroid significantly reduce the risk. So we have to uh, we have to avoid the short-acting beta agonist only treatment. So if at all we have to use short-acting beta agonist, we have to use the inhaled corticosteroids. So Gina now recommends that all adults and adolescents with asthma should receive symptoms driven or regular low dose inhaled corticosteroid containing controller to reduce the risk of severe exacerbation. Thank you.